Welcome to another episode of Discog Discourse. On this episode, we're going to be talking about Beartooth. If this is your first time listening to the show, basically what we're going to do is we've picked a band and we've listened through every single one of their albums, and now we're coming to rank and review those albums. My name is Nathan, and with me I have my co-hosts Kyle and Jeff. It's a new year, boys. How are we feeling tonight?
Feeling amped up for a couple reasons. First off, I feel like I might have some Stockholm syndrome after listening to so much Beartooth, because I started off with being not super hot on them, and now it's just in my veins and in my head all day. So I'm amped up. And if you ever listen to Beartooth, you're probably amped up too.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Jeff, how are you doing?
Doing well. I'm excited to review some Beartooth, a band that I don't know how to put it, has some interesting sound. I'll just say that much.
Jeff, had you had much exposure to Beartooth before this?
Not really. I'll have to admit,
Okay.
especially his newer stuff. Did not listen to it at all. So this was brand new. So I got some stuff to say about him. I'm pretty hyped.
I like that we always have you as the host with bands you've never really listened to.
Yeah, it's funny how that works out. And
isn't it?
I don't want to say anything too early, but when we do our 2023 Discogs of the Year, ranking the Discogs, I wonder where Beartooth is going to end up.
I guess we'll have to wait and see who else we reviewed this year.
I guess so.
There would have to be a serious tragedy for it to not end up in like the bottom two.
Really? Wow. Okay.
I may have to concur.
I guess we'll have to wait and see how this episode goes.
Nathan, do you remember I showed you this when you showed me 4 Year Strong? I showed you Beartooth.
I do remember that. That was forever ago. I think that was coming out of 8th grade and going into freshman year of high school.
Yeah, we were in Six Flags in California. And
Yeah. We were sitting in traffic, and I think you showed me The Lines and Ignorance is Bliss, because this is way back when that was really fresh.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is really cool. I like this. I can't wait for the future of this band. TBD how I feel about that now. Oh my goodness. All right. Before we go any further, you already know I have to plug the social media. If you want to join the discourse, you can follow us on Twitter at Discog_pod, on TikTok at Discog Discourse, on Instagram at Discog.discourse, and we humbly ask that you leave us a 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening on. If you enjoy the show, that would help us out a lot. The algorithms, they love that. And speaking of social media, we have a couple tweets from the last episode that we want to shout out right now. If you want us to read your tweet on the show, just quote tweet our rankings with your takes or your rankings, and we'll choose a couple to read on the show. Like this one from Nico at Like a Shadow with 2 W's. This is in reference to us ranking all of the bands that we talked about in 2022. He says, plot being below A Day to Remember on all 3 lists should be considered a crime in all 50 states and all of Canada. Now, none of us really liked The Plot and You that much. Like, their highs are high, sure, but their discography overall kind of pales in comparison to a lot of the other bands we talked about, especially A Day to Remember. Kyle, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, listen, I put my thoughts on The Plot and You out last episode, and they have absolutely not changed. I have nothing to say because we've already said it, Nico. All right.
Whoa.
Whoa.
We've established that A Day to Remember has an all-time great discography and have some all-time great albums. The Plot and You doesn't. Like, simply it does not in the scene or out of it. That's how I feel.
I also think it comes down to personal preference too. I mean, A Day to Remember and The Plot and You have such different sounds. It just comes down to which one you prefer more. So
Jeff, how dare you bring the reasonable, everyone's allowed to have their own music opinions.
I know that's a hot take these days. I'm sorry,
I
but
know
I think it's true.
subjectivity.
Yeah.
I'm serious though. Has The Plot and You ever gotten close to touching Homesick?
No.
Like an album like Homesick? Absolutely not.
But I'm just saying, like, if someone else disagrees, I can't hate on them too much if they like the sound that The Plot and You puts out.
Fair enough. I will say the Plot News' newest song is so good.
It's very good.
It is very good.
And Landon does have an incredible voice. I mean, his range is awesome. So it's not that the Plot New is terrible. It was very low on all of our lists. But they're not terrible. We just talked about a lot of better bands. This next tweet comes from Alex Tombstone at xtombstone_. She says, Kyle the dude to like quote unquote real metalcore and then go listen to Locked in My Head. Kyle, do you like Locked in My Head by Fit for a King?
I do not, but I do I do think that Alex coming from my dome each episode is pretty funny and
It's
usually
so good.
very, very accurate because he could have slipped in many songs there that would have been accurate.
True. I love putting out the promotional material because I know Alex is gonna come in swinging after Kyle, and it's so funny.
I think my favorite of his tweets was I can't even remember what episode it was, but he just said rare Kyle dub, and every other one is common Kyle L.
Yeah.
Just fine. We're just fine.
He is not wrong. So this next tweet is from Aaron McNaughton at Azamac, AZZAMC. He says, looking forward to giving this episode a listen. Think Nate's is my fave. Good taste there. He says, my top 5, so many great British bands. And then some of these bands are not British.
Nathan. It's not the
Oh,
British
that's
flag.
the Australian
That's
flag.
the Australian flag.
Our text is really small, but the same point applies. Not all these bands are Australian.
Yeah, are they? I don't.
No,
know,
the
actually.
Devil Wears Prada is from
America.
Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean there are some Australian. Isn't
Wind Waker, I think, is Australian.
Thornhill is Australian.
Yes.
Northlane is
I have
Australian.
no idea about Northland or Stand Atlantic. I would
I think
assume
Northland
Stand Atlantic
is-
is American.
I really don't know. Anyway, his list, aside from that tangent of me being an idiot and not knowing flags of the world, he says Stand Atlantic, FEAR, Wind Waker, Love Language, The Devil Wears Prada, Color Decay, spelled color with a U in there.
Definitely Brits.
Then he says Northlane, Obsidian, Thornhill, Heroin. Jeff, how do you feel about that Thornhill shout out?
I think it's rightfully deserved. I think it's a great album. Without the gloom there, it would have been my favorite album of the year.
That's true.
I think it's amazing. And it's pretty experimental, and I like what they're doing. So I'm glad that he put it on there.
I have yet to go back to it. I've been a little busy listening to Beartooth and The Gloom in the Corner still. But I like the shout out to Wind Waker because their album has some great songs on it, and it really fell just outside of my rankings.
I also like the Stand Atlantic, which I just looked it up. They are Australian.
Oh wow!
Because I really do like their brand of pop punk. It's so unabashedly poppy that it's extremely fun stuff. So I like that shout.
And you know what? My moronic tendencies aside, there are a lot of great Australian bands out there, and a lot of them produced in 2022.
Yes, sir.
Is the Gloom Australian?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes
Of
sense.
course they are.
Yeah, that's
They
true.
make incredible metalcore. If a band makes incredible metalcore, it's probably Australian.
You could take that to the bank.
It's actually
Yeah.
very true now that I think about it.
Okay. We have stuff to do. So the way we're gonna do this is Jeff is gonna go through his list, and as he reveals his choices, we'll reveal ours and have a coherent discussion about it all. So Jeff, we have 5 projects here, 4 albums and an EP. What is your least favorite Beartooth project?
I'm excited for this. Okay. Hopefully this isn't too controversial, although I wouldn't be opposed to starting 2023 with a controversial opinion.
It would be fitting.
Well, my least favorite Beartooth album is their 2016 project, Aggressive. Okay, not very controversial. Kyle has it at his number 5. Nathan has it at his number 4. So before we begin, there's this question that's kind of been on the back of my mind. What makes a good Beartooth song? The ones you like versus the ones you don't like, what's the difference? Because unfortunately, Beartooth has a lot of similar sounding songs. And I think this album falls victim to that the most out of all of them. My biggest complaint with this album is how samey it sounds throughout each and every single track from beginning to end. Every song follows the same pattern: verse, chorus, bridge, breakdown, chorus. Every single one follows that exact same pattern. And after a while, it gets really, really old. I will say the remix remaster did this album a huge blessing, because the original mix to me sounded very flat, and I really didn't like it with that. The remix remaster does make it feel a lot more full, a lot more finished, a lot more polished. So I have to admit, with the remix remaster, that the album definitely, it sounds a lot better. But that doesn't change the quality of the songs themselves. Because to me, the choruses don't hit. Okay, they're not catchy. And that's sort of one of the hallmarks of a good Beartooth song, is how catchy is this chorus? The heavy parts aren't very heavy, in my opinion. I'm never impressed with them. And the breakdowns just feel like they're there because Caleb felt like they had to be there. He's like, I need to put a breakdown in here. Okay, here we go. Right after the bridge chorus, right here. Every single time, about 2/3 through the song, here's a breakdown. Okay, now let's go back to the chorus. And that's not to say that other Beartooth songs don't follow that formula, but this album to me just feels so commercialized, maybe. Like he was trying to replicate the success of his first album. It just falls so flat. And there's no like emotional raw punch in any of the screaming. The choruses aren't catchy. Aside from a few songs, I don't think I'll ever go back to this project ever again. The only songs I really like are Burnout, Sick of Me, and Fair Weather Friend, like the 3 songs in the middle. Other than that, I really, really don't like any of the songs on this album, especially the first 2. And I know
that's a really bizarre choice of favorite songs from this album.
Really?
I agree. I 100% agree.
Those ones are like the ones with like the catchiest choruses to me. They're like the only ones that really stuck.
But the songwriting in those ones is terrible. Like,
farewell, fair weather friend.
Yeah, well, at least the part before that's catchy though. That's the thing.
Like, I have a note here about how this album has an almost impressive lack of depth to the lyrics.
Oh, well,
like no metaphor, no imagery. And 2 of the songs you just mentioned, I use as examples of that. Burnout, he says, I'm sick of being angry at all the wrong things. Wow. Very deep, Caleb. Very deep.
Okay, but name a Beartooth song that doesn't do that, though.
Okay, but not all of them are this egregious.
Oh, I do agree that this album has the worst lyrics.
This album has the
That's
worst
why I have it
lyrics.
at number 5. It does. I'm not going to disagree with you.
Listen to these lyrics from Sick of Me. I'm sick of you. I'm sick of me. I'm sick of the person I used to be. What a pointless mistake. Such a slap in the face. Gotta turn this thing around again. No more holding it back. No more bending the facts. Push myself till I understand. That is terrible. And you know what it reminds me of? There's this comedian named Bo Burnham, and he has a song where he's talking about how you write pop music and purposely try to make it so that it applies to every girl. And at one point, he's like, I love your hands because your fingerprints are like no other. I love your eyes and their bluish, brownish, greenish color. I love it when you smile, that you smile wide. And I love that how your torso has an arm on either side. This is the radio metalcore version of that, where it just feels like he's trying to reach the most broad audience that he can with the most basic, general negative emotions that people that generally stereotypically listen to this music have, you know?
That's fair. I mean, like Loser, he says, maybe I wasn't like all the normal kids. I was born just a little bit different.
Yes, dude, I have that down. I was literally about to bring up Loser and how he comes out of the gate with that line, and
Yup.
and you're like, oh geez, Caleb, come on, man, who are you
Caleb.
writing
It's
this
really
for?
cool. But see, like I don't hold this album back because of those lyrics, because every album has those. It's just like a Beartooth staple.
I do, because they're worse on this album than any
I
other.
do agree.
Beartooth album.
They are the worst, but I think the other things push it to the bottom more than the lyrics, in my opinion.
I want to highlight some good in this album, and they kind of go directly against what Jeff said was bad. I think Aggressive is a pretty good song.
I agree.
Thank you. Now it is a misfit anthem.
Super bad.
If for sure
This
is a
whole
misfit
album
anthem,
is a misfit anthem.
but Aggressive is not as bad. It's not as
I
egregious.
think it's the most egregious, except for Hate It.
No,
I think they're the two most
way.
No
egregious.
way.
Yes, they
Dude,
are.
see,
Think
I
of
don't-
me, Loser,
Yeah, are you
Hated
kidding me,
are
Jeff?
all way worse.
Fairweather Friend is way worse.
No,
I actually
kind of like Fairweather Friend.
don't hate it. I think Hated is pretty
Dude,
good.
Hate It. I just can't listen to it.
It's a decent song that's really ruined for me by the lyrics.
Instrumental, the
Yeah.
instrumental is good, but the lyrics, I just can't listen to it without laughing. I can't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
who knew you'd be hated for being who you are and being a target for all the insecure? That's tough,
And then
Caleb.
there's one part where he's like, "I'm not your scapegoat anymore." Like it's like so whiny to me in that song.
Now, I
Yeah.
will say there is one song that I will probably continue going back to, and that's Always Dead.
I agree.
Because that song is hard, fast. It's got a lot of punk energy in terms of just the galloping drums, and Caleb doesn't let up. That's the one real song where I go, okay, this song gets me going.
That song is good, but I think he does it better on the previous album. There's a song that follows that exact same formula that's just better. And
Yeah, I mean, it's true, but I don't think that necessarily takes away from this song, because every Beartooth album is, oh, we've heard this song on the album he did before.
Right, fair enough. That's fair.
Also, I noticed that the guitar tones on this album do not change.
No.
It is the
No.
same exact guitar tone and guitar level and same exact riff on every single song. And that's what made me want to bang my head against the table, was because the guitars are indistinguishable from every other song. And it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. That's why I honestly hate this album, is because like Caleb's like, I'm going to do edgy, catchy chorus, and I'm just going to put the same guitar with a couple different notes on every song.
Yeah.
I completely agree.
I mean, he basically copy and pasted one song however many times. Every song is the same.
And by the end of it, especially the second half, it all just kind of morphs together for me. Like I can't really distinguish them anymore.
100%.
I will say that the closer is pretty good. I do like it. It's a good change of pace, but it's not great. It's just like okay.
I don't.
You don't
I
like it?
actually don't.
I don't like
Because
it.
What if with 45 seconds left, it has some hard hitting large chorus where there's more than just his guitar that he's strumming, then yeah, but it's just him and this distorted guitar, and he's just kind of mumbling through the song, and there's no peak. I don't know. I do not like that song.
Jeff, you mentioned earlier that this feels like the most commercialized version of Beartooth, and I had that exact same thought listening to it. I wrote down here that this is the most polished version of Beartooth, and I don't mean that in a positive way where it's like this is the best version of the sound that they could possibly have. I mean, it's like they polished and cleaned up what was a really raw and great sound and made it a little bit more digestible or approachable for wider audiences. And man, like it just loses so much energy and so much personality in the process. And I think for me, that's why it's so low on my list, is there's just no personality on this album. It feels not like an artistic expression of anything, but like a product that he's put out.
Dude, I couldn't have said it better myself. We'll get to it
Yeah.
later. But the album that came before this it's filled, it's like raw emotion coming out. It doesn't feel like an album that was meant to be like sell well, or if it feels different. This one is like he found the success in that first one. He was like, oh, I need to repeat that. The people want it. And so he came out with this. and it just doesn't work.
No, we don't.
We don't. We didn't need this.
I don't.
Yeah, I mean, right when the first single drops and you see what the album cover is going to be, I'm automatically out.
Yeah.
Dude,
Terrible.
take a look at it right now. He doesn't even line anything up well. His eyes and the wolf's eyes are really only lined up. Then his nose isn't lined up. Neither is his mouth. And then he's going to cover his mouth in blood. Like
It's terrible.
It's got to be one of the worst album covers I've ever seen.
It's really bad. I will say there is one more song that I enjoy almost at kind of a guilty pleasure level. I think Rock is Dead is kind of fun.
Yes.
I mean, it's a super goofy premise lyrically, but it's kind of a fun song and it's got some decent riffs. But I think that segues well into something I've compiled here. I noticed a correlation between the quality of a Beartooth album and whether or not he references rock or rock and roll.
Okay.
And on
Go
this
on.
album, on Aggressive, he mentions rock 7 times.
A lot of rock.
And coincidentally, those are all in this song, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
But just keep that in mind as we move forward. If Caleb mentions rock or rock and roll on an album, it's probably a bad Beartooth album.
That's funny. Well, we'll see if it correlates. You guys have anything else to
Yeah.
say about it?
I don't think so.
Are we done with Aggressive?
All right.
Are we going to leave it?
Hey, let's get out of here, boys.
I will say, okay. The last thing is this is the one that surprised me the most because I remember enjoying this back when it came out as a young Beartooth fan, but going back, this is some trash. This is bad.
Well, you don't even have it at your number 5. So I'm a little worried.
Which tells you how much I hate another Beartooth album.
Well, we'll see if
Wow.
it's my number 4.
I hope so. It's probably going to be your number 1 though.
No. If it is, I'm leaving. I'm leaving the pod. Okay. My number 4 Beartooth album is their 2018 project, Disease.
Based.
Okay, good. I knew it. Okay. This album is a bit softer than their previous 2 albums. It's a little bit of the aggressiveness is gone. Not from all the songs, but from a good amount of them. I think there's more of a focus on like the melodic, clean kind of aspect that kind of starts with this album. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing all the time. I think there are some good songs on here, and there are definitely more songs on here that I like than Aggressive, for sure. Some standouts to me, Disease itself is a good song. After All is probably a top 10 Beartooth song to me. That song just gets stuck in my head all the time. Believe is pretty good.
I'm sorry, did I laugh out loud there?
No, you laughed to yourself.
I also like After All, Jeff.
Okay, good. The haters are trying to whisper in my ear. I'm just going to move on, though.
Bad song.
That being said, I have this album at number 3. So
Oh, right.
That's true.
Kyle has this at number 3, and Nathan has it at number 5. So he's trying to bring me down to his level a little bit. But I'm going to keep trucking through.
Who knew you'd be hated for being who you are?
That's not on this album.
I know, but it was a funny joke.
I thought it was funny.
Okay, it kind of got me too. Okay.
I didn't remember any of the lyrics from this album because it's so bad and forgettable.
Dang, bro, come
Whoa.
on.
Okay, all right.
I have bad things to say about this record.
All
But
right, Nathan, go.
Nathan's
You
coming
know what,
out with
Nathan?
his-
Go ahead. You're trying to steal the
Yeah, let's
show. I'm
hear
just
it.
going to give it to you. Why not? Why don't you just tell me what you think?
Yeah, Nathan, you go and give it, and then I'll say why there are
You go
good
ahead.
elements too, because I actually have plenty.
Okay, I'm interested to know what they are because I didn't find that many. One positive I guess I do have is the first song on here kind of surprised me because I remember not liking this album when it came out, but listening to it I was like, wow, the darker guitar riffs on this track are actually really cool and the verses are cool. This is an interesting Beartooth song. And Kyle, this is a super random reference that I think you are the only person in the world that will get it. But the bridge, or there's a part in the riff and the breakdown that reminds me of a song called Visible Cow by
Yeah,
a band
baby.
called Bark Market, and it sounds
That
awesome.
song is awesome, bro.
It's a great song that no one on the planet has ever heard.
Dude, I bump that song to this day.
Me
I'm pretty
too.
sure it's off of Spotify.
No, it's on Spotify because I listened to it the other day when I thought of it.
Let's go.
But what I'm referencing here is the super bass heavy slides on the guitar. I was like, that's awesome.
Did you notice the weird mixing between the acoustic and the non-acoustic part of that song though?
Not particularly.
It's very quiet, and then he like comes in screaming, "Greatness or death," and it's really loud. I don't know.
Yes. I that part annoyed me
It
every
throws me
time
off
because
so
I would
much.
I would turn it up when I'm at work into my one earbud, and then I would effectively go deaf
Yeah.
in my left ear because
Fair.
Caleb decided to turn everything to
Exactly.
11.
He does do that. I will say, following that first track, all the momentum is killed for me with the second track. Like everything I thought was going to be good about this album that I was intrigued by is just thrown out the window. And this is the album that I remembered. It is the most generic Beartooth up to this point, I think. And it leans even more heavily into the hard-rockification of Beartooth that kind of started on Aggressive.
Mm.
The lyrics are as generic as ever. See, the thing about the lyrics on Aggressive is they're bad, but the lyrics on here are very generic. And he's doing things on this album like yelling fire over and over in the bridge
I don't like that song. Yeah.
of the song Fire. That's a huge no thank you from me. I think overall the most offensive thing about this album is just how generic and boring it is. It has far less of those aggressive moments on the album. The energy is down. The songs are more mellow. There's nothing to chew on this album. Maybe not nothing, because Bad Listener is a fine song, and Use and Abuse is also pretty good. Like the riff and the intro of that song especially is pretty good. Even by the end of that song, when he's saying "use and abuse" over and over again, I'm done with it. So there's some decent songs, but I feel like almost all of them have one moment that I'm like, I could have done without that part.
That's a fair assessment. I actually don't really like Used and Abused, but I do like Disease. And Nathan, you mentioned that you didn't like Disease.
Disease is all right. I really scoffed at After All.
I scoffed at Fire. When he comes out with sink a little lower, get a little higher, finger on the trigger, screaming ready, aim, fire. I started having flashbacks to Five Finger Death Punch. Like, dude, I was in a bad place when I heard that, bro.
And you thought I was being mean.
That
so
song
funny.
sucks. But I enjoy Bad Listener. I enjoy After All. I know you scoffed at that one, Nathan. And I do like Infection. That's kind of my guilty pleasure song on this record. I think the chorus is really catchy, even though the breakdown is so maddeningly samey. There is not one unique or really good breakdown on this entire project, which is frustrating. When you're listening to something where you want to get amped, he doesn't do anything different. It's a similar guitar tone, or the same guitar tone. I guess my stance compared to yours, Nathan, is that I just don't see this album as offensive as you do. I like this more than Aggressive because he's doing something different.
Mm-hmm.
From 2013 to 2016, he does nothing different, and it gets extremely stale by Aggressive, as we've obviously talked about. And here he's kind of, oh yes, it does.
Okay, I agree.
Right.
There are two distinct eras of Beartooth, and
Right.
depending on how this next one goes, we may enter a third. But I think Aggressive is the mark of that second era where things get kind of
think so.
more hard rockified than
but
hardcore metalcore.
But he doesn't experiment with pop punk like he does in this album. He has like 3 straight up pop punk songs on this album, which I think is good, and I think is a complete different step from Aggressive. And that's why I would think that this is kind of the step into a different era. I think Aggressive is much more similar to. I just think Aggressive is a very stale, bad version of the first 2 Beartooth projects, and I think Disease is a different feel altogether. Even though the breakdowns still suck,
it does usher in kind of a new sound for some of his riffs. I will say that.
Definitely.
That is
Believe is a pop punk song that has a cool melody, pop punk guitars. Caleb Shomo's voice, it does not suit pop punk at all, which is probably why the pop punk sound doesn't really stick or do well for Beartooth. But Believe, Infection, After All, more poppy stuff that, Caleb isn't really good at. But
I can't believe you mentioned Believe. Like,
I like that song.
I have written down here, this album cemented itself at the bottom of my list as soon as I heard Believe.
Because it's not heavy.
well,
Like, what don't you like about
It's
it?
just it's not good. It's boring, it's generic, it's bland. I don't find it particularly catchy or memorable.
well, no,
Like,
I wasn't.
that's
I
like
wasn't
half the
saying.
songs on this album, but like I guess I don't think Caleb does the pop punk sound that you're talking about very well. To me, it just comes off as generic. I'm trying to get on the radio with my radio metalcore.
You think it's more?
This is like,
You think it's more generic than the aggressive sound? Like whatever was coming out of there.
I think the more mellow songs are more generic.
Yeah, but I think that's a different formula that he's using that's kind of at least giving us a little bit of differentiation between Beartooth, because Aggressive just didn't give us anything like that. And I didn't necessarily say I like Believe. I'm just saying Believe is
Sure.
more of a pop punk song. But I mean, overall, arguably the best part about this album is the Red Bull logo on the album cover, which I think is awesome, dude. I don't know why that's so cool to me, but it is.
Red Bull Records, baby.
Yeah. Hey, first metalcore band that Red Bull signed.
That's kind of cool, actually. I didn't know that.
Very, very, very random.
Yeah, that is extremely random. But that's all I got.
Okay.
Jeff, did you give your full thoughts?
I mean, I think you guys said most of it. I'm definitely agreeing with Kyle here. I think the reason why I like this album more than Aggressive is because songs don't mush together as much for me as it was for me listening through Aggressive. Like, I feel like there's definitely distinct moments throughout this album that there just aren't Aggressive. I don't love this album, and in fact, up until like a couple hours ago, I was still debating on which one I wanted to put at number 5. I don't love this album by any means, but there are more songs on here that I'm going to come back to just because they're insanely catchy, and I don't think I'll ever go back to like any Aggressive songs aside from maybe one or two. But here, I mean,
See, I'm the flip of that. I think there are more aggressive songs that I go back to, and maybe that's a little bit of bias towards nostalgia, but I don't mind Aggressive, Hated, Always Dead, Rock is Dead, a lot of dead on that, but I go back to those more than anything on Disease.
It's fair. And I guess the thing about Disease, it just has like more earworms. And if the lyrics are going to be corny, which they are, at least make them like earworms so that I can't stop like getting out of my head until I listen to the song again.
Yeah.
Like, that's what After All,
Fair.
Disease, Believe, like these songs, they're just clever even. Stuck in my head.
Infection has been echoing in my brain all afternoon. It's driving me crazy.
Oh yeah. And I really like Bad Listener. The way that he screams on that song, I don't know what he does differently. It feels like so like almost evil. I don't know if you guys like got that, the way that he was screaming on there. Like kind of more high pitched. I don't know.
I don't know if I'd say evil, but that is a pretty good energetic Beartooth.
Yeah,
song.
I don't know. It's just
I like that's the best song of the album.
I'd agree
it's
with
either that or After All too.
pretty easily.
No response, Nathan. No response to that After All comment.
His
No,
voice just gets lost in the ether.
I think I was just so dazed by what you said there. Like, that didn't even compute in my brain.
Fair enough. But yeah, no, Bad Listener is a good song. I wish that he would do more of the way that he screams on that song. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and listen to it. Just the way that he does it, I don't know. I wish he would do that more.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I agree. I think it's awesome. It's so brutal.
Yeah.
It's just like he just sounds almost demented. How he's
It feels like old Beartooth on that song a little bit. The way that he's screaming,
A little bit.
like the way that his raw, just like feels like you can feel it coming out, like the emotional weight behind the screamings. But we'll talk more about that later.
Yes, we will. Did y'all listen to the bonus tracks on this album from the deluxe version?
I think I listened to one and I hated it and I moved on. I think I listened to I listened to like Takeover or something, and I was like, this is horrible, and I turned it off.
Yeah, the best one sounds like a song off of In Some Way, Shape, or Form, the most forgettable 4 Year Strong album. But Young might have the worst Beartooth lyrics I've ever heard.
Really?
When he says play loud, play fast, and you'll never die young, I got my very first record, was in an all black sleeve. I took it home to the player, turn it up till my eardrums bleed. I had to stop listening to Beartooth for like a day after I heard that.
I mean, dude, that is just terrible.
It's awful.
Caleb, at least hire somebody to write for you, or at least
For real.
Caleb, plagiarize for all I care. Just stop this, all right?
Like, when writing lyrics, generally anytime you say something like, I got my very first record, I took it home to the player, you want to avoid saying things like, I did this, I did that. Very simple actions like that. But Caleb said, nah, dude, we run that up.
Hey, to be fair, it is an
Oh,
extra.
bro.
So it's not on the original project.
Yeah, but he
thought it was good
released
enough
it.
to include on the deluxe version of the album, a version of the album.
He knew it was bad enough not to include it on the original.
But this is a version of the album that's for people that like the album, so they're gonna buy it again. So he thought it was worth their money to buy a $12 album that they already own.
It's actually okay. Fair enough.
He thought it was a song worth another $12 purchase.
Maybe to someone it is.
I mean, he had to have dug that song up from the depths to think
He
it's worth
scraped it
being
off
on
the
this thing.
floor.
I mean, yeah. What's your lyrical process for that?
I could write a better song than that, I think.
No doubt. You have written a better
We
song
have
than
written better songs than that, Kyle. And that's saying something.
that is saying a lot.
That's true though.
Oh man.
We'll do a minus
It
bid
is.
episode.
Imagine.
Imagine.
Cut that. All right.
Okay.
But we also include the 2 party favors songs.
Yeah, what happened to that?
right.
I just have not had any time to
Aw.
write music recently. I would love to do more though. I also need to find another vocalist, but it is what it is. There's a little treat for the listener if they want to go search that up. Jeff, next album.
All right.
Let's run it, boys.
All right, let's keep going. I'm feeling good. Okay.
Oh. This out, it's a bad Beartooth album because he talks about rock 3 times.
Yes, he does.
Bad Listener and Young.
Less times than aggressive. So according to even your metric, aggressive should be below.
I just said anytime he references rock, it's a bad Beartooth album. I didn't say there was a correlation between how frequently he does.
Okay, sure.
If you review the tapes, you will see that I did not perjure myself.
Run it back. Instant replay.
All right, my number 3.
And the call stands.
My number 3 Beartooth album is their 2021 project, Below.
Yeah, buddy. That is also my number 3.
Kyle?
It's my number 2.
Ooh.
Whoa.
Okay, I have some questions, but we'll get to it later.
First off, I don't think this is as controversial as you think. I kind of had a come to Jesus moment about EPs.
I don't know if you guys would agree with this, but it feels like a little bit of a return to form to me whenever I listen to it. It feels like there's a little bit of more of that energetic sound that he had before that kind of comes back on this album. Even the opener to me is very, very energetic and fun, and I like it a lot. And then there's other songs on here where it's pretty energetic, and I feel like that there's, I don't know what I'm trying to say, like I guess more of that metal aspect coming back and getting away from sort of the hard-rockification, as Nathan would say. And I just think that there's a lot of songs that I like. No Return to me is easily like a top 10 Beartooth song. I like that song a lot. And I also like Below. And I really, really like Dominate too.
Yeah.
Dominate's a great song.
Yep.
And
Dominate's a top 10.
yes, it is. Well,
Agreed.
Yeah, at least top 15 for me, I think, in my list. But
Top 10
Elevate's
for sure.
good. I even like Skin. Skin to me is insanely catchy, and I just cannot get it out of my head. And so with a lot of these songs, it feels like he's kind of going away from what the sound that they established in Z's. And I don't know if you guys agree with that or not, but would you agree that there's a little bit of a return to form here on this project?
Absolutely. I 100%.
Not exactly.
I agree in that Caleb Shomo is writing different music. Like we talked about with Aggressive and Disease, it's pretty generic stuff. You know, he might go a little more pop punk in Disease, but it's still Beartooth. Man, the breakdowns in this album are undeniably filthy.
They're awesome.
In some of these songs.
I like the breakdowns a lot.
And the guitar riffs that he implements through these breakdowns are creative in some ways.
I agree.
The elements that he implements are fascinating. I think Devastation's a great song. I think Below's a great song. I think The Past is Dead is good. The O's kind of turn me off, but you know, that's okay. But Dominate has blast beats. There's nowhere else in Beartooth's discography that has blast beats. You know, Skin, like Jeff mentioned, I don't love it, but I mean, the thing kicks off with a filthy bass riff, and that bass riff comes back in the bridge. When does Beartooth do that? They haven't. And so Caleb Shomo's trying new things, and I think it's really working. Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, the breakdowns are what separate this album, kind of what saved this album. But I think his singing is better, his songwriting is better, and he's kind of gotten the memo that you can't use the same tones for the guitars. And he's trying different riffs. He's trying different elements. He's trying different sounds. And his vocals sound different on some songs, which isn't really normal for Beartooth. So I was impressed. Because I had never actually listened to this album, because I remember listening to Disease, hating it, and then seeing Beartooth release an album was like, okay, cool. But I was actually blown away, dang it, by this record. So
I agree. This is a very impressive record. I have a slightly different take on it from y'all in the sense that, like, you know, it's a return to form. I think it is a return to form in the sense that we're getting really aggressive. It's really energetic. It's high energy. It's high octane. It's metalcore. We're kind of back. But I think it's not really a return to form in that he's not going back to the same sound that he had on the debut. We're not getting those kind of hardcore style riffs that we get on there. But I think the guitar riffs, to me, honestly, kind of sound like a more refined, more aggressive version of some of the guitar riffs you hear in the more aggressive songs on Disease. Like, the guitar riffs on here sounds a lot like he took the song Greatness or Death and kind of built off that in a more aggressive direction. And so I think it's interesting that you say it doesn't really sound like Disease, but I think this sounds like what Disease should sound like.
Well, Nathan, let me break in and just say Phantom Pain has the exact same chorus as Greatness or Dead. Like
that might be why I like both of those songs.
I was listening to Phantom Pain, and I was waiting for the for Greatness or Dead.
That's really funny. Yeah, y'all already mentioned like a lot of the really good songs on here. Like Devastation has great riffs, a really strong hook, and a pretty dang fun breakdown. Dominate, the main riff is awesome. The blast beats are sick, and the breakdown is so cool. And like that kind of darker tone that they have with the notes that he's choosing caught me so off guard the first time. And then outside of that, Fed Up has some really cool production choices in the bridge with the bass slides, and the main riff in that song is nasty. No Return has this like really wobbly guitar in the breakdown. There's, like Kyle, you mentioned, they're doing interesting things in the way this is written. The bridges are almost always interesting and almost always cool. I like what he's doing on this album, and I think it feels so fresh compared to the other albums that he was working on beforehand.
Completely agree.
Agreed.
Yeah.
The production is just so good. Like the way this album sounds, his guitar tone is unreal. And like guitar pedal time. The guitar guy's going to talk about pedals. There are parts on here where it sounds like he's using an octave pedal to kind of drop the guitar an octave, which gives it like a more full sound, especially when paired with the main line that it sounds like he's building on top of. So basically he's using the guitar to kind of stack up on itself with a pitch shifter in the octaves. And it sounds like he does that a couple times on this album, and it sounds sick. I love that sound.
Like, do you have an example?
Pretty much all the tracks are kind of aggressive. It sounds like he does it. I think it really sticks out to me in Below and Devastation. Okay. Like a lot of the times, like the main riff comes in, it sounds like he's doing that.
Hell of it. He doesn't do it in the breakdown, because the breakdown was like that super slow, odd. I didn't love it, but he does it in the chorus because it kind of sounds like a Rob Zombie song in the chorus, and like he's really messing with the octave of the guitar.
Yeah, he's doing some cool stuff on here. I was surprised by how much I liked this album.
Yeah, me too.
Bangers.
Yeah,
Bangers.
I completely agree.
The album cover sucks, but that's
Really?
fine.
The album cover is very like cool metal biker dude demographic, but I don't.
Okay, that's
hate
what it is. It's a biker. At first, I thought it was a jackhammer. I was really confused.
Actually, I think I like it more than the
No,
previous
it's
two.
a bike. I agree.
Yeah.
It has personality, which is something Beartooth desperately needed.
True.
That's true. Disease is only cool because of the Red Bull logo. Other than that, it's kind of dumb. But
Yeah,
The red
true.
dude, the aggressive album covers is just like the more I look at it, I just get mad. I just get more angry. Even the remixed remastered is so
I like the remix
stupid.
remaster more though.
I do
Oh
too,
yeah,
but it's still
easily.
dumb.
It's still not good though.
Caleb Shomo, bloody and shirtless.
He's shirtless in a lot of pictures, actually.
He is.
I do not look at shirtless pictures.
No,
of
no, it's
Caleb
just like on the
Shomo.
Spotify banner.
I
and
do.
Stuff. Like,
Yeah.
The Spotify banner, all the promotional
always
material
shirtless.
for their newest song. He's always shirtless.
He has a jacket on the Spotify banner. Oh, but when you go down lower, yeah. What the heck? That's kind of like oddly.
well, he's wearing a jacket, but dude, it's like hanging off. What do you mean?
It's a little suggestive.
Oh no, I'm looking. Yeah. You're looking at the about Spotify thing. I was looking at the top.
They're the same
banner.
to me.
The point still stands that he is shirtless
Yes.
often in promotional material for
And his
Beartooth.
body is unremarkable. You can cut that.
Whoa, I disagree. Okay, we're getting into a really interesting topic when it comes to Beartooth. I think he looks pretty good, like in the Riptide music video.
I
He
need to
looks.
watch. I haven't seen that.
Pull it up
Ja-
right now and look
Are you
at him.
serious? You want me to?
Yes,
Oh,
I need validation.
okay.
Okay, yeah, he does.
Just
okay.
like scroll through it. He's in shape.
He is in shape. You're right. I was wrong, but
Oh, I see it. Yeah.
his arms are pretty small.
His arms are small, but that's not everything, Kyle. Not everyone has show gains.
Ooh.
That's true. I also do not have show gains, so don't even.
You need that.
Yeah. He. You're right. He's a slim, good-looking guy.
A strapping young lad.
All right. I'm glad that this part will not make it into the episode.
It absolutely will.
Hey, you know, I'm watching it right now, especially with that lighting, and it honestly looks pretty good.
Caleb's looking kind of nice. Oh my gosh.
Caleb, do you want to come over?
Caleb, do you want to get on
Okay,
the
so like
show?
weird thought, but
Caleb,
like, what if we had Caleb on?
What's your workout routine? And like none of us were wearing shirts.
Oh,
And what if we had like fake blood all over us?
and we all took a picture together.
Like, would you be interested?
Yeah.
Like, at all? I didn't expect the Beartooth episode to go any other way.
I mean, listen, man.
Honestly.
If you offer Caleb to show up somewhere covered in fake blood and shirtless, he's already there.
If he sees his chance, he is taking it every time.
Oh, that's so
Wow.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
That's delightful.
Okay.
Megan just texted me. That was a funny little bit.
So we have to include it.
Shoot. I mean, I was never going to take that out. Are you kidding me? That's comedy gold.
It's so great timing. All right, boys,
All
let's
right.
get back on
Okay.
track.
Let's finish this strong. All right, ready? My number 2 Beartooth project is their 2013 EP Sick.
I agree.
It's my number 4.
Kyle, do you want to start with this one?
Yeah. My revelation has kind of been one that Jeff has been echoing for a while. And it kind of hit me on this EP of Songs Matter. And that this is a great project. A great project. There's not one bad song on this EP. And I really enjoy every single song on this EP. But the fact of the matter is, I did have trouble putting it against these, 40-minute albums that there are moments that I really do enjoy. Obviously, it's above aggressive because I don't really enjoy aggressive, but I just had a problem, or I just had trouble putting a 15-minute EP over a 40-minute EP that I overall enjoy. Even though I do really, really like this album, or this EP. And if you just look at it on the plane of like project by project, how strong each project is, I would probably say that this one is stronger. But the fact of the matter is, songs do matter. And I think there are more quality songs, obviously, on Disease and Below, especially on Below. It's just too short for me to put any higher. So I literally have nothing bad to say about it.
One thing you said was certainly true. Songs do matter. And the highs on this album, which is on like every song, I should say EP, not album, clear everything on Below, Aggressive, and
I was gonna
Disease.
say that. I was gonna. Okay, wait. So, what? Hold on.
What?
I do have a rule. Usually, I don't put EPs above albums unless there's really, really good reason. Usually, because I do agree that it's not fair to compare like a 2-song EP versus a 10-song album. But in this case, the songs are so good, and I think that you could easily put all 4 of them in the top 10 Beartooth song list easily. But it has to be above at least the 3 newest projects of Beartooth, for sure. And I wouldn't be surprised if some people put it above all of their projects based on how good these songs are. So that's why for me, I had to put it above Aggressive, Disease, and Below. Just because this era of Beartooth is what I want. And it's just like my favorite my favorite form of Beartooth.
So you tapped into something there for me. The era of Beartooth. It's this EP and their debut album is like a very specific era of Beartooth, and it is by far the best version, the best sound that they've ever had.
I think that Aggressive is still a part of that era though, because it's trying to be the same thing.
I don't think it is trying to be the same thing. I think it's trying to be a radio version of that same thing, and that to me is kind of what pushes it in the other direction. Is Caleb's trying to do radio.
I just think it's sure maybe a softer version of the same thing that just gets extremely stale. I don't know. Because I've always read it as Aggressive, Sick, and Disgusting are one era, and then Disease and Below are this next era. That's interesting that you see Aggressive as, even though I think Aggressive obviously is just a bad project.
Yeah,
Jeff,
I don't know. I'm definitely on the fence. Shocker. I'm definitely on the fence.
Let me try to persuade you.
Okay.
I think part of what defines the eras also is the quality of music. That's something that I factor into it. Because I look at Beartooth and I'm like, okay, you get these 2 projects that are really good. He changes something up in between Disgusting and Aggressive. And so I think that's the start of a new era towards going more radio friendly. And it also marks the start of songs being not nearly as good.
I guess I see it as Aggressive is just a lazier version of Sick and Disgusting. That's why it gets stale, and that's why it's overall not good. It's because the guitars are the exact same, and it doesn't sound like he's making any effort lyrically. So it just feels more lazy, but it's still a lazier version of these excellent projects.
I guess in my opinion, though, the magic has already been lost on Aggressive. Like, the emotional weight
I agree.
And, like, the reason why he's making music, it feels like it's already gone by Aggressive. Sort of what Nathan said, and I kind of brought up a little bit too. It feels super commercialized. Like, it doesn't feel like he's making music anymore because it's like a form of therapy. It feels like he's making it because he wants to make money. And so I feel like only the first 2 projects really tap into that. I'm doing this because this is like a form of therapy for me, sort of deal.
It's his creative outlet at that point, not a moneymaker.
That's fair. Well, let me just say this.
Yeah.
I love Go Be the Voice. I think that the anthemic nature of that song kind of sets the tone for the discography, even though I Have a Problem, which comes before that, is a better song. I Have a Problem, I feel like, sets the tone for Disgusting with, I mean, man, how hard is it to listen to some of those songs? Because as Jeff's been mentioning, how raw he is in I Have a Problem. I love that song. It's one of my
I think it's
favorite.
the best Beartooth song.
I agree.
It's up there. It's a top 3, and there's no discussion there. But Go Be the Voice kind of like morphs into that. Beartooth also has a lot of anthems, and I think Go Be the Voice sets a great tone for those anthems. And then you got Pick Your Poison, which is a classic Beartooth song, but is a massive song with intriguing melodies. It honestly reminds me a good amount of A Day to Remember, but I mean, it's just a huge song. And then obviously rounding out with Set Me on Fire is just an awesome EP. And I wish it was longer, but I stand with ranking it at 4 because it's 25% as long as both Disease and Below.
Sure.
I think the way I justify it in my brain, putting it this high, is, we've already talked about the eras, whatever you think about that. Sick and Disgusting is the version of Beartooth that I so desperately want back. I would sacrifice any, if not all of those albums to get another 4-song EP like this. So in my mind, that puts it higher in my rankings, as well as you open up with Beartooth's best song.
Yeah.
Like, how strong of an opening to a discography than literally your number one song. And, it probably helps that Caleb was in another really successful band before this and already had some experience writing songs, writing music, having successful melodies and all of that in a small little band called Attack Attack.
Yeah.
Small little.
Small
Yeah.
band. You may not have heard of them. They're kind of underground.
Super underground.
But like this, I think Jeff's really tapping into something with the personal nature of it. Like this was his kind of side project outlet towards the end of Attack Attack's time. And then as that officially disbanded, he moved forward with this, and it's all him. And so I think that really leans into the, like, this is just something that he's doing out of passion. He loves this. And this project just rips. It's high energy. Caleb's screams have this like really distinct rawness to him that I don't really think he has anymore. And it makes it so much better. And then like the tones on this, like, while certainly amateur, like the guitar tone is very crunchy, but it works so well. There's something to that rawness that really works with this sound. Yeah, I prefer this sound of Beartooth. It's better than the other 3 albums that I put below it. And like for a 4-track EP to have 2 top 10 Beartooth songs, for me, it's hard to argue with that going any lower than the number 2 spot. For 50% of your songs to be top 10 material, arguably more.
Yeah, but when you say 50% and it's only 2, that makes it a little less impressive.
Disease doesn't have 2 top 10 songs.
That's a low percentage.
That's true. No, that's
Aggressive doesn't have 2 top 10 songs.
I agree. I definitely could have put Sick above Disease.
That's where I was, Kyle. Yeah.
I stick with having Below above Sick. I do stick with that. I actually feel very strongly about that.
Yeah, I was between putting Below above Sick or not, just based on the fact that it was an EP. But based off the stuff that Nathan said, I decided to put it at number 2.
Yeah. No, I mean, Nathan's making some great points. And Disease, I could definitely see myself switching Sick and Disease for sure, but not Below.
And these songs, I mean, they just have like a good, like, complex song structure to them too. Like I was sort of talking about with Aggressive, It's like chorus, verse, chorus, bridge, breakdown, chorus for most of the songs. This one doesn't have that. This project does not have that at all. And it makes the songs really interesting, really engaging. And, I think what Nathan was talking about is true. Like, as much as we love how polished his new sound is, there really was something unique and that just really fit the emotional weight of his lyrics with that kind of crunchy, lesser produced sound, if you know what I mean. There's just something to that.
It's a distinguishing factor of the era.
Yeah,
you could say.
Definitely. So I really, really like that. But I'll definitely have more to say when we get to my number 1. It's sort of, I think they'll go together.
Our
collective
number one. Unanimous.
I'm glad we agree.
There's no other choice. It has to be. There's no other choice.
Yep.
Okay, so my number 1 Beartooth album is their 2014 project, Disgusting.
When I tell you I'll be fine, I still want you by my side. Please just try to read between the lines. Where's my comfort in the undefined? Please just try to read between the lines.
So Nathan, why don't you go ahead and tell us why you put this at your number 1, and then I'll sort of gather my thoughts.
Yeah. First off, I was not ready for this album to be so nostalgic for me. It's a little bit weird when you follow a band for so long that their music eventually gets to a point where certain albums are nostalgic. And like we kind of mentioned this earlier, but I had written down, like, it feels like it was just the other day that you showed me this band, Kyle. but that was actually so long ago.
Yeah.
And so listening back to this, it really was super nostalgic for me, hearing some of these hooks for the first time in a while, hearing some of these breakdowns and thinking back to like singing them live when we were in high school. These songs hit hard on the record. They hit even harder live. It's awesome. But this album, like, this is genuinely a phenomenal album. Caleb took that sound that he was kind of working with on the Sick EP and just did a full-length version of it with maybe a little more hooks in there, but in all the right ways. It doesn't sound like he's trying to go for the radio. It sounds like, I'm Caleb Shomo. I'm a competent songwriter when it comes to hooks and guitar riffs, and I'm just going to make a disgusting album. And that's what he did. And it's awesome. It's raw. It's energetic. The guitar tones are super crunchy. The breakdowns hit hard. And there's this super strong kind of punk and hardcore influence just all throughout this that's so good. We're not talking about complex metalcore leads like you would hear in an Invent Animate song or super down-tuned guitars like in Darko. It's just fast. It's a little bit sloppy, really, like some of the guitar work on here. But that's part of what makes it so good. It just makes it so raw. And those small imperfections, like hearing feedback from the guitar in the breakdown of the lines. And it's just in the breakdown. There's this like gain sound in the background under the breakdown. It adds so much depth to it, and not in the way that bands usually go for depth. And it just gives this album so much personality. And it's so, so good. I would say the opening stretch of tracks from the lines through I Have a Problem is very close to perfect.
Really, I don't really like Beaten in Lips that much.
L.
I think Beaten in Lips is pretty. I think it's the weakest in that stretch.
It's still good.
I would agree with that, but it's still a very good song.
I mean, Nathan, I would go through Keep Your American Dream because I like one more. Or excuse me, I would go through Me in My Own Head. The lines to Me in My Own Head, possibly excluding Beaten in Lips. I mean, man, there are potential top 3 songs in the discography in that stretch.
Oh yeah.
Everywhere you look, the line, Body Bag, In Between, Ignorance is Bliss. I Have a Problem. Like, I mean, and like, I know we've talked about how this isn't a necessarily strong discography, but that's impressive. When you have a run where it's just like banger, 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 and like I guess it's more than a banger. It's like what you were saying about the feedback and the different emotional strings that Caleb plucks. Jeff, you said that with just how raw his vocals are and how sad he is in some of these songs and how vulnerable he's being in some of these songs. Like we talked about I Have a Problem, Ignorance is Bliss, the lines. I mean, I don't know. It's like when you're listening to a song and it's awesome, but it's also hard to listen to at points, that's when you know you got something special.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Like, and I Have a Problem where he's kind of like almost cries like at the end of it. That's just like really powerful to me. That entire song is just really powerful. You find that throughout this entire album. Like all the songs are like that. Maybe not as forward, I guess, in like I Have a Problem where he's literally like almost crying, like at the very, very end of the song, and he can like barely get through it. But like most of the songs have that like emotional weight behind them, for sure.
Well, and like Sick and Disgusting, the closer, he does cry, and his
that
voice
song is hard to
cracking
listen to
throughout, and like it's really hard to listen to. But what I've found, I guess, in listening to this album for 8.5 years, is that it's a very compelling song because I mean he's talking about some real stuff and some real deep-seated hurt. But it's not in like a weird perverted way. It's just like, hey, this is how it is. This is how it was in my life. And I am broken because of it. And that's intriguing to listen to, though it's unbelievably difficult.
Man, I had a joke about that song and you just took all the wind out of my sails.
All right. Go ahead and edit your joke before I say that.
No, I'm not going to. I'm going to say it now and everyone's going to have to sit through it. I was going to say I don't really like that song, which is fine. You know, it is very raw, very emotional. It's not fun to listen to. And I was going to say, and it gets extra points deducted because I think at one point he says daddy.
He does say daddy. I don't want to be sick and disgusting.
Yeah.
And that just makes me very uncomfy.
That's the only reason why it's hard to listen to, actually, that one line.
True. It's not the vulnerability or anything. It's just
It's
because
not the fact that he's gagging at one point, basically.
it's the part where I'm picturing shirtless Caleb Shomo covered in blood saying "Daddy."
But yeah, I mean, and also I think this album has the catchiest songs. Nathan kind of mentioned that he adds a little bit more of the hooks. I'm so happy he did that because some of these songs are such earworms that you will be humming it to yourself like months after listening to these songs. And I really like that.
In between, bro. In between. That song
It deserves all the plays it has.
It's so catchy.
It is my favorite song. Probably because that song is so catchy. And I went for like 3 years without listening to it. And then I re-listened to it, obviously, in the last couple months. And everything that's happened in the last 8.5 years just came back, hit me in the face. It was unbelievable.
Dude, that's what I'm talking about with the nostalgia on this album. It's weird.
8.5 years, Nathan. 8.5. That's how long we've been listening to this.
That's a weird thing to think about.
Do you guys like Keep Your American Dream?
Yeah.
Because Kyle, you stopped.
I think it's good.
I think it's really good. I really like it.
So for me, this album takes a very slight dip after I Have a Problem.
That's fair.
And I don't really love One More. I don't really love Me in My Own Head. And then you get two great songs. Dead is amazing. Arguably the best Beartooth song. I think it falls right behind I Have a Problem for me. But like that is just a barn burner of a song. It is nasty. And then Sick and Disgusting also happens, and it's whatever.
That's fair.
And he says daddy, and then
The Daddy song.
No, but
the daddy song.
Keep Your American Dream to me is it's insanely catchy.
It is.
Yeah.
I do like it. It's just not I would say a highlight.
Well, and then it has that one part where he's like, "Go ahead and keep it. I will never need it." Over and over, like near the end. It's just really aggressive.
good.
I really like that part.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you drop that song on Disease, that's the best song on Disease.
Oh, for sure,
Easily.
for sure.
And we can all go home.
Not even a question.
But I mean, just relatively speaking, it doesn't really stand out for me on this album, though it stands out in the discography.
That's fair, and that's definitely a huge compliment to the album for sure.
I will say the most brutal part in this album, and possibly the most brutal part in the discography, is in Relapsing when he's just screaming relapse, detox,
Yes.
over and over again. Like, I have never taken a drug in my life or had a problem with drugs in my life, hard drugs, of course. And I don't know, I felt something when listening to that. I can't relate to that at all. But like the way he delivers that is nuts.
It's that raw emotion coming through.
Right.
Mm-hmm. The next song in Ignorance is Bliss, I really like where he's like, "I'm not one of your demons" over and over. I really like that part for some reason. I don't know why.
Mhm.
That part is really sick.
And then when he just starts screaming ignorance is bliss.
Yeah,
isn't
that
it?
part too.
That part is so good.
I really like that part. Stood out to me a lot.
Gosh, man, and then I Have a Problem. When he's screaming, I have a problem over. I guess we're seeing a pattern here, but
Yeah, but I also like where he's like, "But I'm admitting now that I have a problem." He's like, "Ugh," and then it like breaks down. That part's awesome.
And it kind of like breaks the scream and just kind of talks for a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
He does stuff like that throughout this album. Like I think it's in the lines where he kind of goes from singing right into a scream at the end of it. Like he modulates his voice a little bit, and it's like that is so cool. Why doesn't he do that anymore? Probably because it might not be great for your voice the way he was doing it, but
Probably not.
it's worth it.
It is worth it.
Yeah, dude.
worth-
Like
Look at the streams, Caleb. Look at the streams you get.
it feels like he breaks the fourth wall when doing stuff like that. With like the I have a problem part with Sick and Disgusting and just like messing with his voice.
Yeah,
and
that's
going from a talk to a sing. I don't know. It's kind of awesome.
I do have to say, just to prove a point that the bad lyrics didn't start later, they did start in this album. No, I don't want to disparage, but and I Have a Problem, he does say a hole inside me is more than a metaphor. And it's right after.
I'll take that over anything he said on Aggressive, though.
Honestly, fair.
Because I think there's something to like, okay, let me get on my soapbox here, as I often
Go
do.
ahead.
There's something to simple lyrics when they're incredibly raw and vulnerable and genuine. And I think it's easier to excuse on an album like this that is super raw and vulnerable than on something like Aggressive, where it's simple and it comes off as lazy because it doesn't feel really passionate. So I agree, the lyrics on here are not great, but it's not as offensive as on other albums.
No, it's
I
not.
actually think there are, I think there are some moments where I'm like, I'm surprised that That's not a terrible lyric. Like, you can lie to everybody around you, but you can't lie to the hole inside you. That's pretty hardcore.
There's
It's pretty
lyrics
good.
on here for sure.
It is also, it feels like one of the last true albums of the quote unquote hopecore era, where a lot of bands were kind of doing that. Oh, we're singing very broadly about inspiring lyrics and stuff. And, you just got to keep pushing through and things will get better. Like, this is very much a product of that time. And we don't really see those as much as we used to.
Mhm.
Bands like Memphis Mayfire in their heyday definitely fall into that. Plus the fall of Mice and Men and a lot of those like Rise Record kind of esque bands back in that time. We're all kind of doing this very general hope core. And I think this is one of like the last albums of that era.
That's a great term, hopecore.
I've
I
never
love
heard that before.
Yeah, that's what it was called. I don't know if that was like a derogatory term for it or not. It might have been because
Yeah,
people don't
but you're
generally
right.
think of.
I mean, you're definitely right.
They don't think of hopecore generally as a very positive thing. But I can get down with some hopecore. I'm
It's
not
good
gonna lie.
hopecore right here.
I like it. Now, stop me if this is out of pocket. I think of this album in a similar way to the way that I think about Homesick by A Day to Remember.
I think that's a great
In
take.
terms of what? Nostalgia or quality, or in terms of
how good it is.
oh,
I think the quality is certainly part of it. I don't think it's quite as strong as an album like Homesick, but I think it is an incredible album, a product of its era for sure. And looking back on it, dude, this is a classic metalcore album.
yes.
In the same way that Homesick is a classic metalcore album. So when I think about classic metalcore, I think Homesick and Disgusting are like two of the first that come to my mind.
That's very fair.
Yeah, I have no problem with that take. I think that's an excellent take.
Cool. I thought I was going to get a little flack for that, but I mean, it's true. And it may also be because it was like, bands that I listened to very heavily at the same time when I was getting into this style of music.
Oh, yeah, same for me.
But I don't often think of Memphis Mayfire and
No.
their great albums in that category, even though I listen to them a lot.
Yeah, but they
at that time.
they don't have an album to this caliber.
No, not at all. Some people would argue that against that, but yeah.
Maddie Mullins, for those of you who don't know, the singer of Memphis Mayfire, has a contemporary Christian album out.
I do know that.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, I do
listened
know
to
that.
one song and I turned it off. I
No, thank
actually
you.
needed to pray afterwards.
God forgive Maddie for what he's done.
What's it called?
I'm sorry he made music for you. That was so boring.
What's it
Yeah,
called?
I mean that sucks so much. Let me look because
I need to
do
check
not
it out.
have
I
it
think
to
I remember
memory.
you guys talking about it at some point, but I never listened to it. I'm intrigued.
I think he has a couple actually. I don't know what they're
maybe
called.
they're just singles. No Hold on Me is one of them. Oh, Unstoppable, I think.
Stop.
Oh my gosh, what a generic one-word contemporary Christian thing to say.
Unstoppable Maddie Mullins, and the album cover is really funny actually. he's wearing a ripped up sweater, but it's like a trendy ripped up sweater.
Barf.
Yeah, that's a bad.
Oh, I
that's a
see it,
bad
yep.
album cover. Holy crap!
Okay, I'll have to check that out after this.
No, you won't.
I want to listen to one song.
You don't.
Jeff,
Give me one
don't.
song.
Don't
Don't do it.
don't do it. He didn't use the creative gifts that God might have given him.
Yeah, Jeff, just read a hymn book. It's better.
It's not honoring to the Lord.
It's not. Well, anything else on Disgusting, gentlemen?
No, it's good.
Nope, it's an absolute
It's great.
classic. It's amazing.
It's a chef's kiss. The definition.
Cool.
You may have noticed something about the last three albums. No references to rock and roll.
Really? At
Just
all?
throwing that out there.
Here.
Nope, not a
Not
single one.
Single one?
Not on Disgusting, not on Sick, not on Below.
Wow.
Yep, he must have snapped out of it for Below. I think he saw the correlation.
Well,
as
does he say it on Riptide, their new single?
I don't know, actually. I didn't look at the lyrics for that one. Riptide has kind of a cool breakdown.
Yeah, well,
Very interesting guitar effect.
yeah, the whole song sounds kind of muddy to me. Like the vocals are trying to fight over the instrumentation, and I don't really like that. It's kind of, but
I remember nothing.
I don't think it's the most impressive
No.
Beartooth. It's a safe single, that's
Yeah.
for sure.
I'm not excited for what's coming next based on that one single.
I'm interested to see what happens because I feel like, Beartooth, I feel like he always does that. You get the aggressive single and you get the poppy radio friendly single.
That's fair.
I guess
Yeah.
we'll see. Are we still talking about if bands could defeat 4 Year Strong? Is that something we're leaving in 2022 or are we bringing it to 2023?
I think we leave that in 2022.
I think
unless
so,
you guys feel
too.
differently.
All the creative and humorous conversations we've had have kind of summed it up nicely. I don't think we could take that.
We always just say no
It's reached.
and move on.
It's reached. It's of course. Well, that's the joke, right? But I think it's reached its creative end, and unlike some bands in this scene, we're just gonna let it lie.
Whoa.
Yeah.
When a project is done, it's done.
Yep. Completely
Yep,
agree.
exactly.
Cool.
All right. Well, in that case, I think that's everything for this episode. So if you enjoy it, like I said earlier, please do leave us a 5-star review. That would help us a bunch. And I guess there's no point in plugging the social media at the end. You follow us on something if you've listened this far. The next episode, we'll have a very nice Valentine's Day episode. So be sure to tune into that. We're going to try to have it out on Valentine's Day so you and your beloved can listen to that together. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you on the next one.
Can't hear what you're shouting.